What is going on, Tenor Crew? My name is Billy the Squid, and today I want to talk about invasions in Elden Ring and how FromSoftware might be trying to completely neuter the online community of this game, at least the way it seems right now. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, FromSoftware has stated that invasions in Elden Ring are going to be limited to the invading person only being able to invade parties that have co-op enabled and active. So you are only going to be able to go in and invade people that have 2 to 5 people, I think, because I think it's 4-player co-op up until this point. So that is what they are kind of wanting to do. And there's a few instances where it makes sense. There's a few instances where it don't. I'm going to break them all down here. But the immediate thought that comes to mind is this is going to make it extremely difficult for a lot of the covenants to function, and it's going to alienate a lot of the more PvP-centric players of the game that preferred those solo invasions, either invading in a 1v1 situation or being invaded in a 1v1 situation. And the community's been talking about this for a few months now, and there have been a few ideas thrown around. I don't think any of them hit the nail on the head perfect. And I believe FromSoftware is still taking suggestions and community feedback on this kind of stuff. So we definitely need to make sure that our voices are heard. And I'm about to give you all mine. So why are solo invasions so important? And I wouldn't say that it's the fact that solo invasions are so important. It's that you don't want to cut a section of your player base off based on their playstyle from an entire mechanic of the game. People that play the game solo, there is a large sect of people that will never use Jolly Cooperation, that will never use whatever the spirit system is that FromSoftware is putting in place. They just want to go through and they want to do everything by themselves. They want to be the sole proprietor of victory in these games. I primarily am one of those players up until I get 2 or 3 playthroughs of the game done so that I can understand the mechanics, because whenever you're in a co-op situation, it tends to kind of just become an R1 fest in a lot of circumstances, especially if you are playing with somebody who is already experienced. If it's 2 newbies going at it, then you're learning the game together. That can be a lot of fun. But if it's a veteran guiding a newbie through, you can kind of get too handheld, too training wheeled by that co-op player kind of pushing you through, and you won't properly learn the game. And I do believe that invasions are a part of what FromSoftware do. So this alone is a large chunk of the player base that I don't want segregated out from invasions. Another fact is that this is going to make a lot of the covenant systems feel a little bit different. Now, FromSoftware very well and probably will make it so that covenant zones are going to be exempt from this rule. If you walk into a covenant zone, similar to what Aldrich Faithfuls were like in Dark Souls 3, where it didn't matter. You walked in, you are going to be invaded. You are susceptible to invasions. There's not a lot you can do about that other than going offline. And that's fine. There needs to be zones like this. There needs to be areas that force these kinds of interactions, because that's how you keep the online community thriving. This is where you cultivate your online PvP community. There's also going to be arenas. There's also most likely going to be some specific invasion mechanics for the dungeons and legacy dungeons. But as of right now, it is pretty all-encompassing on the only invade co-op players rule. As of right now, the game still has a ways to come out, and a lot more info needs to be coming out about that. But what are some of the solutions that can prevent FromSoftware from doing the first sin of Elden Ring by denying the solo player the ability to be invaded or to invade other solos? Well, the first thing I saw tossed around was have a opt-in system. An opt-in system similar to what the Dried Finger is, where you can turn it on and it opens you up to solo invasions. This sounds good on paper, and it's not a bad idea, but I don't think it's perfect. And I don't think any of the ideas I'm going to be bringing forward that I've heard from the community are perfect. But opting in, the good thing about that is you're not going to alienate anybody that doesn't want to participate in PvP from getting griefed or anything like that. Griefing is what I believe to be the primary cause of FromSoftware wanting to do what they're doing. That, on top of the fact that mounts are existing in the open world, make it so that it could be fairly difficult for you to actually be able to find somebody. And I'm pretty sure that open world co-op, it may lock you into specific sections of the open world. So there's already going to be those gates up. If you invade somebody and they do a jump point or whatnot, it could separate you out. I would hope that the netcode would be good enough to like track up until the last moment. But this could be a method for people that are being invaded to sit on a jump point until the invader is right before they spawn and then jump out. I don't know if that's the case. In other games, it's always been as soon as the invasion is starting, the walls go up, so there's not like any interaction, or the player doesn't know unless they're right near one of those fog gates until that invader sign comes up. But back to what I was saying, opt in while it sounds good, and it will promote the people that want to engage in 1v1 PvP in an invasion sense. Like I said, arenas are a whole nother thing. Dueling and invading, while 1v1 in some situations are completely different ball games, and have completely different players that enjoy either of them. The problem with an opt-in system is Elden Ring is going to be a big game. Elden Ring is going to bring in a lot more players because Elden Ring is going to be a lot more accessible to those new players. It has also been so hyped up that even people that the game might not be for, or players that weren't used to Dark Souls games or didn't like Dark Souls games, might still give it a try just based on the open world nature of it. These players at least need a taste. You don't know if you like spinach until you try spinach. You can think that you don't like spinach, but then you put that son of a bitch on a burger and it's delicious. Spinach burgers, highly recommend. PvP in Elden Ring, highly recommend you at least try it. This is where the second method that I've seen being tossed around is, and it's an opt-out system. So the method that I saw suggested was you get invaded. It sucks. You hated it. And whenever you die to your invader, they drop something or you get an item. This item then you can either pop in the open world or use at one of these Fallen Graces, and it's going to lock you out of PvP for 30 minutes to an hour, give or take however long FromSoftware wants to fine-tune that. That's fine. The problem with this opt-out system is it's, again, probably going to affect Covenants. There are a bunch of Covenants in the Souls games of past that have had a more defensive nature to them, like the Blue Sentinels that will come into a world of a player that is being invaded so that they can help defend the player. If you have a large chunk of the community actively opting out of these instances, it is going to make it hard for any type of defensive Covenant to exist, unless those defensive Covenants are also invading in with the co-op players, in which case invaders are going to have an extremely bad time because they're going to immediately be into a 3v1 based on at least one co-op partner and then at least one blue coming in to stop them. And this brings me to another point that I kind of want to mention, in the fact that FromSoftware's mindset on invasions is correct, but it is not the sentiment of a lot of the hardcore invasion players. The mindset of FromSoftware is that invasions and invaders should lose the majority of the time. That's why we've had so many horrible mechanics for invaders in past games. Bloodborne having the 75% health mechanic. Dark Souls 2 having the soul memory system so that twinking couldn't happen as much. Dark Souls 3 having a light version of what Elden Ring is proposing, where you're more likely to invade players that are in co-op than you are to invade solo players. Now, some of the systems that FromSoftware put in place are good, and I think they should be. Anti-twinking measures are 100% the way to go. We need to have weapon scaling, maybe not specifically like scaling AR down to whoever you're invading, but you need to at least make it so that the weapons are on par, the gear is on par. There needs to be systems like that in play. And since Elden Ring isn't going to have a human system or a embered system like that, they really need to double down on how fine-tuned they want the weapon ratings, armor ratings, like make all of that stuff. You could even have like game-based progression where, oh, you're invading somebody that hasn't killed a legacy dungeon boss yet. Well, you are going to only be able to be invaded by people who have only not killed a legacy dungeon boss. This can easily, like I said, with the open world breadth of the game, you can get everything you need for an in-game build, most likely without having to actually complete any of the main game stuff. It's the way it's always been in these games, but anything to protect new players so that whenever they do try spinach for the first time, it is as likely to be a good experience as it is to be a bad experience, just based on their mindset and based on how they are. They need to at least give it a try, while also keeping covenants like the Blue Sentinels alive and keeping it at least fun for invaders. I think invaders, deep down in their heart, know that they are supposed to lose. I think that's why the twinking metas have occurred in the past, was because they're trying to tip the scales in their favor, as I suppose they should, but it's come to the cost of newer players, where you are invading in the first or second areas of a game, destroying new players that have never experienced PvP before, and you're ruining spinach for them. You are giving them a moldy leaf and telling them to enjoy it. Of course they're not. So what is my suggestion? The Billy the Squid approach to how invasion balance should be handled in Elden Ring. Well, as far as the mounted combat and open world stuff goes, I have no clue how that is going to impact, and my response here is not going to be taking that into account as much. There still needs to be a way to lock the invader and the invadee into an area, and open world's going to muddy that a little bit. It's going to make the areas a lot bigger. I think in open worlds, invaders should have access to their mount. I think some nice joust style invasion combat would be kind of cool, actually. But the Billy the Squid approach to invasions in Elden Ring goes as follows. Everybody from the start of the game has access to a defensive covenant, whether it's Blue Sentinels or something similar to Blue Sentinels. There needs to be that kind of an access. This can be something that can be disabled or enabled, whether you want to take the invasions head on the chin by yourself, or if you want to have backup. I do believe that every player in the game should also have access to the defensive covenant. So not only do you have the people that you're going to be summoned in, but you also need to have access to be able to be summoned into other people's worlds. I do not want these tied to the same covenants. I don't think Blue Sentinels, if you have Blue Sentinels equipped, you're going to be going back and forth between invading and being invaded, well, by helping and being helped. I think that people that are wanting to have an edge in invaded combat are most likely not going to be the players that are going to want to pay it forward, at least not at the start. I do believe having both of these accessible at the beginning, as well as being toggleable, is most likely the best option. That way, FromSoftware is keeping their co-op thing if they want it, but it kind of gives an opt-in, opt-out system to whether you want help. That way, these overpowered early game builds that may inevitably come out of the game can be countered by blues that have equal powered builds. If that becomes the case, I would like to think that FromSoftware has learned and can get their weapon balance and their game balance to a point where the twinking issue is going to be lesser than it ever has been. But Billy, I hear you saying, what about the players that just despise this kind of content? What about the players that may want to participate in co-op, but they've tried your spinach and they hate it? They want nothing to do with it. What do you do for those players so that they don't have to be subject to this consistently throughout their gaming experience, but they can still stay online so that they can play with their friends or take part in whatever co-op based events are going to take place in Elden Ring? My mindset on it is to make it a covenant-based reward. I think that this can be something that you can either earn through being being helped. I think if you and a blue help defeat an invader, then you get an item that will allow you to disable PvP for a certain amount of time. I think they need to raise the ceiling on how these items are handed out and not just hand them out every time you are defeated, because people are just going to start throwing, and it's going to make an unfun PvP experience on both sides, honestly. I could see people, you get invaded, somebody throws themselves off a cliff just to get the item. You just wasted your time as an invader. I think they need to raise the ceiling while also supplementing the ability for somebody to maybe catch the PvP bug. You don't know you like something until you experience it, and most of the time you don't know you like something until you experience it a few times. Sometimes things just grab you. In Dark Souls, I don't feel like that is the case. I feel like most people who enjoy Dark Souls PvP started from a place where they tested it and then worked their way up. I think this is a good way to kind of ease people into this. And with this high ceiling, they could extend how long the item lasts that prevents invasions. They could extend it for an hour or so. If they even wanted to, they could have it so that there's a vendor at some point that will allow you to purchase these items. I think they should be at a very high premium, but I do believe that having that option available as well. These are the Billy the Squid approaches to how invasions should be handled so that we're not going to be locked in an only co-op system. I feel like having the defensive covenant and the helping covenant be right available from the get-go. Maybe not like auto in your inventory, but make it so that it's like one of the very first things that a player does before they're even allowed to go into PvP. And then having an item so that you can opt out if you participate in these functions. That is the Billy the Squid way. But we will see what FromSoftware decides to do, or if they decide just to keep the only invading in co-op system in place. I do believe this is the wrong way to go about it, but I am interested to hear what you all think down in the comments below. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. My name is Billy the Squid, and if you like the content, maybe check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Billy_the_Squid. We stream Souls-like content every night around 10:30 Eastern. But until then, much love. Bye-bye.